So today is Ostara, which is the spring equinox. It's the time of rebirth and renewal. I'm over the woods now. It's quite warm, quite sunny. I've been sitting by the river just listening to all the birdsong and listening to a woodpecker in the distance, just watching the water, you know. And then I've got this horrible mutt that's like stomping around everywhere. That's this old Muttley charging around, stomping around, breaking things. That's right, I don't mind. Dogs are good company. Yeah, it's quite nice to be back here, because this morning I got up fairly early and I decided to go into town to do some shopping, and some real cunty people about today. I was waiting for the bus, and this fella, this bus driver, very impatient bus driver as well. I got on the bus and I said, so how much is that now then? How much is the bus fare now? And so it brings up on the screen, and it's gone up even more. I'm like, oh shit, it's gone up even more. But I thought, oh fine. But then he was like, are you going to hurry up then or what? And I said, you know what, I'd rather walk. And so I hopped off the bus and I walked, and I thought, you fucking talk to me like that, dickhead. So I walked into town, and I was coming up the main road. I was pretty much in town by that point, and I was coming up the main road, and there was an old lady sitting in a mobility scooter on the side of the road, on the pavement, right? And she'd stopped, and she was like sitting there and sort of sunbathing for some reason. And so I'm walking along, and I walk past there, and sort of my shadow kind of briefly goes over her, right? And I can't exactly walk into the road because it's, there's loads of cars everywhere, it's quite busy. So I just kept walking, and then my shadow goes over her, and I just hear, oh, for fuck's sake, she says it with a really, like, a mouth without any teeth, really gummy sounding. Oh, for fuck's sake, And she looks up at me, and she goes, oh, it's a ginger. Oh, that explains it then. And I said, fuck off, you old hag. So, then I did my shopping, and I decided to go and get some slop from KFC. I never get any like fast food or anything, and I thought, well, I need to put weight on, don't I? So I'm pretty much all skin and bone. So I decided to go and get some KFC, some chicken wrap, and a burger. I got a zinger meal, whatever, and I thought, So I tasted the sauce, which is supposed to be, hot. I could barely taste it. I thought, okay, I'm not really interested in spicy food anyway, but it's not really a zinger. It's not really what I would call a zinger. Anyway, there was a girl behind the counter, and she was like covered in all these, the gay flags and stuff. It's like all these buttons and all that sort of thing. And so she gave me my food, but she didn't have my zinger meal ready. So she said, you know, I'll call you over when it's ready, but you can have your wrap and all that sort of thing now. So I had that, and I sat down and I was eating that, and I thought that was fine. And then there was this woman there, and you know, this really loud, obnoxious woman there, but I wasn't taking notice of her. And then so she calls me over, but she's sort of I'm sort of like zoning out. I'm just sort of looking out the window and stuff, and she calls me over as, you know, my burger's done. And so I walk over and I say, oh sorry, I was on another planet. And this woman standing there, this old woman standing there, and she looks at me and she goes, that was really hard to watch, that. And I said, okay, I don't give a shit about what your opinion is, you know. And she had like she just glared at me then, and so I walked off. And then for some reason she comes over to me, fucking personal space, and she says, you know, you're a really rude person, you are. I said, would you please kindly fuck off? And then she walked off. Yeah, it was interesting. Interesting interactions today, but it just reminds me of how much I hate going into town. Like, those kind of interactions don't happen all the time. Sometimes I go into town and I see all sorts of strange things happen. When I was a kid, I used to go into Spoons with my nan, and we used to see all sorts of strange things. Because it's just a run-down shithole now, and I've noticed more and more homeless people showing up. And then you've got, you know, certain people from other backgrounds who've turned up, and they're always about, but it's the same old faces that you see, right? And they wander around the high street, and they're up to something. You can tell they're up to something. They don't work, and they got like Gucci watches, and they're like got all the top shit on. And I look at them, and I think they're probably doing drugs or something. Like, why else would they be on the high street all day just hanging about? And that's just how it is. I remember when I was a kid and I was with my nan, and we sat in the Weatherspoons, and I remember my nan saying, oh, look what's happening outside. And so I look outside, and there's this this couple, right, and this sort of a younger guy and this really old fat woman, both sitting on a bench together, right? And they were like at it, and they were like going at it on the bench. And this is like midday, and it was a sunny day. It was during the summer. There was loads of people about, and there were kids about pushing, and women pushing prams and all that sort of thing. There was loads of people about, and then we saw that like in the middle of public, and we were like, what the hell was happening? There's no sign of the police or anything, like, but like they were going at it on the bench, and like his hands were just like going everywhere and stuff, and then he starts rubbing something, and he's like, he pulls her titty out and that, and I thought, what is happening? You know, and after that, like, my nan would not stop talking about it, and she was always going on about it. Like, oh, do you remember that time when we saw those people having sex on the bench? And I said, I wish I didn't. I wish I didn't remember that, but I do. But yeah, it's rough, it's grim, and it's a shithole. Like, it's fucking weird. I remember that many years ago there was a pub that was reopening, and I said to a mate, why don't we go up to the pub and have a few pints and stuff, because they was doing like cheap beers. And so we were walking up the high street, and I think it was like during the summer, it was only like 7 o'clock, something like that, so it's still light. And so we're walking up the high street, and there was this we're walking up to like this abandoned department store. That literally every building on the high street is just abandoned, it's just closed. But we're walking along, and we're like talking about something, and then we both look, and we see this old woman standing in the doorway of this old department store, and she's like she's like that character from Little Britain, you know, that where David Walliams plays as that character who's like and wearing that really long skirt. So this woman's standing there, and she's holding she's like got a really long skirt, and she's holding her skirt up, and she's like pissing everywhere, and she's like just pissing all over the floor, and leaving this like trail of piss going down the road, and like a river literally going down the road of going down the high street, and we both were just staring and watching as we were walking past, and then we just looked at each other like, did that just happen? Did we just see that? Yeah, I think we did. Okay. But then over Christmas, I went into town a few times over Christmas. Not many times, but I noticed that there was a lot of homeless people about. Loads of homeless people, right? And much more than usual. And like you come into the shopping centre, and there was like all of these homeless people all laying in like rows as you come in. I thought, what the fuck's going on here? And then there was like a puddle of urine on the wall, by the wall. There was like a man, like they're all like in sleeping bags, and there was a man in a sleeping bag, right? And he had like vomit all over his sleeping bag, all over himself, because I'm walking along, and I'm like, oh, what's that smell? And I look down, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's the smell then. And he's like, he's just laying in his own puke, and there's just like this puddle of puke everywhere. And I thought, what is happening? What is actually happening? It's so grim. It's so grim, and it's so shit. That I'm glad I live in a much more rural area, so far away from all that shit. But you know, I don't think I could stand it. I don't think I could put up with it if I moved to a town or a city, because of how English towns and cities are so run down now. You know, and it's also unnatural to live in a town and city as well. Well, it would be for me. So I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I'd just get so fucking bored. At least here I can take in the fresh air and not just smell the stink of cannabis or like diesel all the time. Things are changing. I mean, it's already changed. It's gotten so bad. But the government is not exactly addressing the real issues that we have, and it's obvious that they have been bleeding money for years, and the real source of the problems that they've decided to ignore. And instead they've decided to squeeze as much money out of the working class, out of the ordinary English folk. And then there's a series on Netflix. I don't have Netflix, I don't give a shit, but apparently there's a series on Netflix called Adolescence, which it's been basically being talked about in Parliament as we speak. And so obviously it's just propaganda slop, but obviously they are missing the point of the issues that we face entirely. And so I've been thinking about it, and I think, well, because they decided they want to vilify young men, and specifically white young men, right? And I mean, it's not exactly the right way to go about it, is it? Because white young men, white young working class men, are the people who are going to be fighting their wars. It's not a very smart idea to vilify them, especially when Starmer wants to send people to the front lines to fight in Ukraine. No. As peacekeepers, of course, as peacekeepers. But I imagine that the Russians would probably be looking for any kind of, I think, well, maybe both sides would be looking for any kind of excuse for things to escalate. But if you vilify your main, force, then you're not really going to have an army, are you? I mean, we got many foreigners here now that I don't think they'll fight at all. That's not going to happen. And working class young men, they're not going to fight. So he's making these promises that I'll come to Ukraine and I'll protect Ukraine. How can you? We don't even have the money to keep wasting on Ukraine, and we don't even have the men. We don't even have the people to send into the meat grinder. So, but they are vilifying us, and they intend to, well, it's to demoralise and disenfranchise. That's the plan, isn't it? That's the plan. And so our freedoms have been getting squeezed more and more and more, and a George Orwellian 1984 future looks more and more likely. But in terms of young men, what we need and what we always have needed is community. Not the fucking shit community that we've got, the society and the fucking religions, the dying religion of Christianity that is just an absolute joke here now. Like 1,500 years ago, Our ancestors came from Germany and Denmark, and they came here and they settled here. England is unique because without the English, England wouldn't exist. Okay, so these men who came over here were proud warriors, proud warrior men, and that's what we are today. We're proud warriors, right? But we're now in a position where we've got nothing to be proud about, and we've got nothing to fight for. It's I've been thinking that we need to create like our own initiative. We need to create because when I think of we need to create a community, and when I think of a community of English men, I think of the Germanic god Tyr, right? The god of war, because that's what men are, right? Men are warriors, and when you go to school, you're sort of you're squeezed, right? Women are much more, they're passive, they're obedient. Men aren't, and so schools try and squeeze men to be more feminized. I think, and later society has encouraged more feminization of men, gradually as men have grown up. And then you've got all this bullshit that, we have to look at lonely young men and think about squeezing their freedoms. Probably not a good idea. I think we should probably be looking at what makes us men in the first place, and what masculinity even is at all, and who we are as English people. So I think that there has to be some kind of community to be created for us, like an initiative to bring us together so we can have brotherhood, friendship and brotherhood, to bring us all together and basically save ourselves from modern society. We need a community that encourages and embraces masculinity, and also does the same for our English culture and heritage. That is what we need. That is, I don't know, maybe something I want to create. I can basically develop my own ideas. But I've always liked nature, and I've always liked history, and I've always believed in creating some kind of off-grid community, because, and it's also, it's to conserve the idea is, like, for me, has always been the idea of like conserving our culture, and but also protecting the natural world as well. Like, in the future, right, we will see a lack of housing, and to me, I don't think it will matter if there is land that's meant to be protected, right? If there's like land that, we can't do anything with it because it's it's under protection, it's got its own sort of purpose and you can't build on it. I think in the future that will change. The government will change that, because we desperately need land to build on, and so places that have beautiful forests meadows will just all be destroyed, and they will build common blocks on them. The population is way too big, and my grandfather, right, when he was around during the war, he lived in like a countryside village. He lived very rurally, but he said, I visited London once, and he said, I think London was overcrowded even back then. And back then there was something like 45 million people in the country, and now that is, I'm not gonna really believe what the government says that the population is today. I'm gonna say probably 85 million, maybe more than that. It wouldn't surprise me if it's, well, like 90 million or something. But yeah, I think that we have to form some kind of initiative, and I'm thinking of like calling it the tier initiative, right? So it's men who can be men, right, and who believe in traditional values and protecting our culture, but also I don't know how to sort of figure it out really, but things are going against us. Things aren't looking good. Things are changing. Things have changed, and things continue to change in a much more worse direction. I think, if we come together and sort of, I don't know, work together to create a community, to develop a community, so we can get a hold of some land, I don't know, some land in the country, go through the legal proceedings of being able to create an off-grid community, you know. That has always been a dream of mine, but if we can come together and create some kind of community, I don't know, work together to do something, I think that would be good. You know, I don't know, but I don't know. So that's what I've been thinking about. So anyway, this it's probably time to say goodbye for now, I think. Yeah. Alright. Goodbye.
But we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy. But we're never gonna survive unless we are a little crazy.